Okay, so now we're going to begin with, I guess, unit painting this Footsore Miniatures Fyrd. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. When I paint for units, just to get units on the board, I don't spend as much time as I would when I'd say paint a leader figure. However, I still do detail and I still do several different coats and colors, but I paint pretty fast. I try to paint fast because I have a lot of miniatures to paint, and I've tried to create a design, a method of how to paint figures really fast, economy of speed. A lot of my stuff is taught. I learned from James Wapple, and just from trial and error. This may not be a way that you've seen before. I think I've done in other videos how I've done speed painting, but this works pretty well for me. So these colors, first of all, what I do is I look at the figures. This is just the set of pack of 4 figures. So I go, okay, I'm going to pick several different colors, and I'm going to use those colors throughout the pack. That way, I save my paint, I save time with using paint, and I also save time with, okay, well, the paint's on the palette already, and I'm just going to grab what I want, and I'm going to alternate. I'm going to say, this shirt here will be, say, a gray color, and these pants may be a green or a brown color, and then I'll take that same green, and I'll apply that green to this shirt, or these pants, and then a gray or a brown here. But I try to use the same colors throughout the pack just to help me with speed. Now, my method, what I do is I use various different colors of paint and companies of paint. So I'm not here to endorse any kind of paint. For instance, for this example here, I've grabbed 2 colors, Panzer Vallejo Panzer Aces Light Rubber and Vallejo Monocolor Uniform Green. And I'm just going to start that out with the alternating either between the legs on one figure and then the pants, the pants or the shirt on the other figure, just kind of alternate. Now, I also use a lot of contrast paints. I don't use the contrast paints straight out of the bottle though. I cut them because I personally don't like some of the staining that can occur. However, I cut them with either glaze medium or water, and then I add them to the base color of that I'm going to paint, so that way I'm creating a shade right away. Now all of this is wet. This is my trusty wet palette, as you can see here. Highly recommend one. You can make one. There's plenty of videos on how to make one. I have several wet palettes. I've had this particular palette for 10 plus years. I have a different sponge. This is parchment paper. Highly recommend it. Let's begin. So again, I'm going to look at these figures and I'm going to see, okay, how do I want to map out my color? I've got a gray. Where do I want to use the gray at? So for example, I'm going to use the gray here on the shirt here, and then I'm going to use the gray here on these pants. And let's see, I might use the gray here on these pants. And then the green, I'm going to alternate here. Probably use the green on the cloak. Okay. Oh, before I begin, what I did here is I'm trying to make the videos to show how people can paint with what they have, as far as priming and getting the figures prepared. This is zenithal highlighting, and this was using rattle cans. I normally do not use this method, but I airbrush, and I use various different colors for my, quote, zenithal priming, but I figured, you know what, most people have spray cans of black and whites and grays and stuff, those different colors. Those are easy to get a hold of, and it's just an easy method. So these were painted actually with a dark gray, just completely over the figure. And then I took a tan, which is kind of hard to see here, and I sprayed the tan at a 45-degree angle, just hitting the highlights. And then after that dried, I took a white and did the same. Now, normally for my other base coating that I use my airbrush, I have greens, I have browns. What I'm trying to do is create shadow work first, shadow and highlight work first with the priming, which creates and saves you a lot of time when you're painting, when you're base painting the figure, because you've already established shading in a lot of areas and you've already established highlights here. There's a good example. It's not the best because, again, with an airbrush, you have a lot more control. It's you don't have these little pixels. I call these pixels paint. But, however, I hope you get the picture. And I highly recommend, to help you with your speed painting, or just painting in general, to use some sort of zenithal type priming, because, again, the idea is, at least in my mind, is you're establishing shade, and then you're establishing highlights, and then when you're actually using your paints, that these establishment of colors will help speed up the process of your painting. Okay, so what I've done here is on my trusty wet palette, this right here, this color right here is Panzer Ace's Light Rubber. This is Skeleton Horde Contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this and add some paint over here. And I'm going to mix this. So I'm mixing these two colors up here. Okay, so it's a little brown. It's a little tan. It's tanner. I might want to add a little bit more. Sometimes I just don't know until, I mix the colors. So take GW Contrast Brown, Skeleton Horde, and I'm going to put it right into it. There you go. See, so what we've established right now is a shade. We still have the base color here, so it's a little bit darker. Put my trusty magnifiers on so I can see what I am doing. Okay, let's just start here. What we can see in the camera. Okay, so to save me time, I'm just putting it all around the figure. Because it is a tan, I'm going to use that tan color to establish a base of a flesh. Now this paint is definitely wet. It's not thick, it's not full coats, but I don't want it to be really thick and opaque. I have to remember that I'm being videoing this. I apologize if the figure goes out of camera. So I'm doing all of this right here. And you know what? I'll get the hair too. What the heck? Okay. There. Sure. Done. Let's grab this guy, and I am going to take this color, this base color here, paint the face, and I like using tans at times or browns to establish flesh colors or bases for a flesh face. Okay. And now I'm moving down to the legs. Now, this is very fast. This is not clean. This is not pretty. Yes, I have the potential of getting paint on other parts of the figure. With good brush control, you'll learn how not to do that. But it still happens. And if it does, that's okay. Happy accidents. We just correct them as we go. Okay, let's see here. Done. So I'm going to find some other colors. So as that's kind of drying right now, I'm going to go back to the Skeleton Horde, and I'm going to apply that right next to the green. So what I'm doing again is establishing a shade right away. I'm using the contrast paint to help me with getting into the recesses of the folds of the clothes. Okay, let's take another figure. Cloaks. Cloaks are always fun. They're a challenge, aren't they? So here we go. Just putting it right down here. So this paint, it's thin. But however, it's not a wash. So you still have control. The paint's not going to flow all over the place. Okay, established right there. Got that. I'm going to look at my other figures here and see what else. You know what? I'm going to use that green, and I'm going to paint the shirt here. And I apologize if I don't know the actual technical term. Again, because we've done the zenithal highlighting, you're going to see a lot of the shading and highlighting pop out through the color that I'm putting down. Now these are just base colors. We're just establishing base colors. So this isn't it. Now, for a lot of people though, they may stop right here and say, you know what, this looks actually, you know, really good for me. It's decent for me. But I just want you to know that this is not it. Now, look at this other figure. What can I do? Since I've got paint out, I will just paint his pants this green color. Okay, there you go. Now, let's go back to the figure here. We've given it some time to dry real quick. Clean off my brush. Okay, so we've got some time to dry. So now, as the paint is somewhat wet, I'm going to go back to the medium part of the paint, the mid-tone of the shade, the darker versus the lighter, and I might actually have to add some more paint to this because it's mixed. Okay, this paint is wet, so we're going to use the advantage of that paint being wet, and I'm just going to start applying the paint onto the areas where there are midtones or highlights. Now, I'm not really worried about establishing shades right now because that will be done with glazing. But again, what I'm doing is I'm putting paint down where there is considered midtones. I'm not necessarily hitting the highlights, the main folds of where the light is hitting the folds, because I'm utilizing that zenithal priming that we did prior. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to this guy. Go to his pants. Here's my trusty number 8 craft brush. That's probably a 30 or 40 cent brush. What I love about these is that it's a big brush, and I can, with one swoop, just take care of a fold real quick. Okay, these are green. Let the green dry. Now, while this is still wet, I want to go back here and see if I need to clean up a little bit. See, everything is still wet, which is great because we're going to use that to our advantage, because the paint itself will, as it's wet, it will dry with those layers on top. So now I am going to go back to the original color that's on our palette and then start hitting it on the areas where light is hitting the most. And it may be hard to see on this camera because of the gradient, and I apologize for that. I will add some more color to make it make the highlights come out. A lot of this is trial and error. A lot of this is because the paint is wet. You have the ability to add or remove color and do some blending. If you don't like a certain area that maybe you think maybe needs some new shading or more shading, I go back. So I just went back to the first color, and I will add some more of that shading to where I think is needed. So like under the arm here, under here, around the neck, the waist, under the arm, right there. Let's add some more here. Yeah. Sometimes I just go over the whole figure again. It doesn't. The paint's so thin, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Let's go back here. I'm gonna put some more under the legs. Okay. Clean off my brush. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to need to add some more water to my paint here for the green, because the model color is thicker than game color, and I don't want it that thick. Okay, this figure here, see how this is like more of a filbert shape, which allows me to do just one passes. Less brush strokes, so when the paint is drying, it looks more, well, uniform. Less brush strokes. Okay, let's get this cloak here. I'm just basically taking the brush and moving down on the areas where the light would be hitting the most. Okay, now I can definitely see that I need to go back and actually I missed the legs on this one. And I will apply the highlights to the folds. Okay, I'm going to go back to the darker color here, and kind of stitch it back together. Find areas where I think needs more shading. And in some cases, I may just say, you know what, I need to add more of the contrast. Or it doesn't have to be contrast, but I like the contrast colors. I use them a lot. I use them a little bit different than I think some people do. So what I've done here is I've gone back to the base color, and now I've got a nice darker color that we can work with. It's thin. Got my craft brush here, and I'm putting down shades, shadows. It's not the deepest, darkest shadows, but I'm establishing points of shade and points of lighter areas. And now, while you're doing this, it may look like a complete mess, and you may become disenchanted with this technique. Stay strong. The more you practice this, you're going to see the advantages of this type of painting style, for war games at least. Now you can use the same technique for competition painting, but you just use a lot more shades, a lot more lines and brushstrokes, layers, allowing stuff to dry a lot longer before you add the next color, that sort of thing. But for wargaming, for me, this is really good. It's fast. Okay, I'm adding more shade here. Okay, now, while that green is drying, let's let it dry for just a little bit. As you can see, this is dried really well. I'm going to go back to the base color again, and this paint is still wet, so I'm just applying that base, and I'm hoping you can see that's establishing a lighter color. Quick brush strokes. There we go. Let's see, where's the other guy? Okay, let's get his pants. Now what's great about this is, before, my God, years ago, I would paint one tone or one color, let it down, let it dry, paint another color. It took me a lot longer than it is now. So, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to start adding some highlights to that gray while everything's still wet. So I'm going to go back and put on the light rubber again. Right there. I use the heck out of glaze medium and water to thin down my paint. Okay. Apply this again so everything is wet. Now I'm kind of slowing down just a little bit, trying to pick out the areas where the light is hitting the most. And that's just really a lot of the folds here. Okay, go here, get the pants. Just hitting the lightest areas. Okay, now I'm going to start working on highlights. Now, I don't go straight to white. However, this is a gray that we've done, so it can be kind of a challenge. So I'm going to take sky gray, Vallejo sky gray. Let's see if I can get it out of that actually is a different tone. So let's see here. Let's try silver gray. Vallejo silver gray. What I like about it is it's still a great color, and it does have that white in it, but it's not just going to introduce white straight to the color and I have a create a stark distinction. I don't want that right now, not yet. So taking that and I'm adding it to the base color. You can see this difference here. Again, everything's wet. You still see the shade, the base, and now the first highlight. getting a nice little flat point on the brush. Yep, good. Starting to see the highlights here take shape. And again, I'm just really fast. Okay, after this, I'm going to go to the green. Constantly moving my figure. Constantly. Okay, looks like we need to add some more glaze here. And sometimes I will take some of the shade and put it right back into the base color to help me reestablish some of the color itself, to make it nice and wet, so that I can then go back real quick like I'm doing here. Again, I'm not worried about this area not being really painted, because with the glazing and the using shades, it will take care of that. I will have the control to put the paint with the brush, just put the paint right into the area that has more shadow. Capes and cloaks can be a challenge for people. This technique allows you to paint really fast and establish those highlights and those shades really quick. Because again, and I know I'm repeating myself, economy of speed, because the paint is wet, it hasn't dried yet, and everything is, as it's drying, everything is blending. So you're using the paint, the wet paints, the different layers and the different colors to your advantage, because it's blending as it's drying. It's tricking the eye, I guess. Let's see, I know I had a guy here with green pants. Go back. Okay. Now this green is pretty wet still, so we're going to go, and I'm going to take, oops, as I bumped the camera, my apologies. I'm going to take this color, apply it back here. So now we're back to more of the pure base color. Yep, and now I could definitely see, and hopefully you can too, that the colors are establishing themselves with the shades and the highlights. There you go. Going back now a little slower, just hitting those topmost parts. And because the brush is a bigger brush, it's just one stroke down, minimizing brush strokes, minimizing work. Not bad for a 40-cent craft brush. Okay, so now I'm going to start establishing highlights on the green. Looking at my table full of paint here, I'm going to grab Vallejo Model Color Lime Green, drop it right there. That may have been too much of a increase in color and highlight, but that's okay. We can always go back and add the base color again. No, I think we're good. There. Awesome. Okay, go back here. Start establishing, putting down on the areas where light is hitting most. Okay, go back, straighten out my brush. Here we go, back down on the cloak. Just hitting the highlights. Hitting the top folds. Adding around the edge here. Now, it's funny, I used to use Winsor & Newton brushes for all of my work. And it definitely, because the brushes are smaller, the size of the brushes that I was using was smaller, it would take me a lot longer. Now, I do use Winsor & Newton brushes for the final detail work. But what I'm trying to show you is that because you have a bigger brush, you can get more area painted at one time, increasing your speed and efficiency. I added another drop of the lime green, still wanting this paint to be wet. Down here. Now I'm kind of slowing down a little bit more. Now for just unit figures, I don't do a lot of highlighting and a lot of shading. I leave that time to the leader figures. And I'm going to do another video of the leader figures for this. You could go crazy. You can continue to do more and more subtle highlights and shades. But when you're painting units, in my opinion, I just don't need it. I don't need to spend that time. And these figures, of course, these are Footsore figures, so I'm a little biased, but they're sculpted really nice. And because they are, it makes it easier for you to paint them. Okay. Again, I'm just adding highlights here to where the light is hitting the most on the pants. I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. Go back to my silver gray. Again, just putting it back down. And again, because the paint is still wet, you've got a lot of wet blending still going on here. Oops, looks like I moved a little too fast with my brush strokes. Got some of the green paint down. Okay, so now I can see I need to put in some more of the Vallejo silver gray to start really showing more highlights. So I'm going to just put it right there. Going to mix that color up. So I still have got the base color in the silver gray. And I'm just putting it again where the areas are that I think accentuated the most. Now, a lot of times when you do this, and I've done it many times, go, oh my god, I want too light. Don't worry about it, because we're going to be using glazes to tone that down. And in some cases, after the glazes are put down and they dry, you think, you know what, I should have done that a little bit lighter, even more lighter, just to show the contrast in colors. So don't freak out. Again, just put it right back down. Okay, I need to start increasing my highlight here, so I am going to use just a touch of white and put it into that silver gray, but I'm going to really dilute the paint so that it's thin layers. And again, just layering it on. There you go. And yes, you're going to see there is a, wow, this is looking kind of funky, Tim. This is quite a difference in color. That's quite all right if you're really worried about it. Because we have a wet palette, you can go back and kind of tie it back together. And because the paint is wet, look at that. You can go right back in and do some kind of wet blending. That easy. And you can go back to your highlights and put that color back down. Just like that. Very easy, very simple. Then I'll do it again. Right back here, put here. Go back to the base color. There you go. Now while everything is wet still, go back to the highlights. just like so. Put that down. Give it some time to dry here a little bit. Let that paint set in. Now the pants, there's not a lot of folds here, so I want to take the folds that I have and start putting down the brightest part, just to create that contrast. Let's let that dry for a little bit. Go back to the green. Putting the green on the areas where the light is hitting the most. To this cape, the cloak. And again, just going back to where the light would be hitting the most, on the edge right there. And I can see now I need to go back or I need to add more of the, what is this color? Lime green, to start jumping up here in the highlights. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Add more lime green right here. And just put it down. We can see that good. Back to this part here. Again, not worried about the shading right now. The shading will be taken care of. Okay, I need to use even more of the lime green. I'll just do straight lime green right here. Because now I want a big jump. Figure. Now when you're painting this, it may just all look like one big mess. And you think, what the heck did I just do? Why did I spend all this time? That's a normal reaction to this type of technique, because it looks messy. But that's okay. I promise you, if you practice, you will see that as the paint dries, what happens with all those different colors. We're about tricking the eye, you know. We're creating highlights, we're creating shadows. Okay. Pants. Okay. Now let the green dry. I'm going to go back to the gray here. What am I missing here? Everything's drying, and I can see that I need to really up the highlights to save me time. Kicking in a little bit more white, but actually after this I think this will be the last highlight on this gray. Because I have other stuff to paint, and I have to remind myself that I'm not painting in a competition. Okay. Add some more glaze here. Thin down it even more. Yep, that's good. Go back. Accentuate this fold that I created with the colors, the shading, the highlights. And topmost of the arm. Let's see, now I have some pants here. I need to paint. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do one more, and then I will be done with the gray. And just putting that color down. I hope you can see that good. Trying to add more of the whiter part on the top of the shoulders there. Fold of that arm right here, right across. Okay. So I'm done. I'm going to say for these figures, as far as these colors, the shirt and the white or the gray shirt and the green, I'm done. So what I'm going to do now is pause the video. I'm going to let this take my trusty $10 hair dryer, blow dry these figures, and then I'm also going to select the next colors that I'm going to use so I can finish these guys up. So that means I need a color for the pants, I need a color for the shirt here, same here, and then colors for the leggings and all that sort of stuff. So I will be right back. Okay, so I've given the figure some time to dry. I used the hair dryer to speed it up, and you can see, hopefully you can see the different highlights and shades. And again, it may not look, the highlights may not look too bright, but when we do the shading and the glazing, it will tone those down, those areas down, and will make those areas pop that are brighter. Same thing for over here. Same thing for over here. So now I have still a lot more to paint as far as the clothing goes on these figures. So again, I take a look at my figures. What do I have to paint? I've got the pants here, I've got shoes, I've got a shirt here, I've got, you know, shoes, a whole shirt and everything. So I picked a couple colors that I think will work well. One of them is Vallejo Panzer Aces Periscope's blue, which I love this color, just love it. And then for the brown, I've taken Game Color, Vallejo Game Color Beastie Brown, which is another great color. And for a different shade, to introduce a different, darker tone, I'm using the GW Contrast Wild Wood. And so let's go to the periscopes here. I'm going to take the Wild Wood and mix it in, and already creating a shadow or a darker blue. Grabbing this figure, now sometimes you could go too dark, and that's okay. It may look too dark right away, but as the color dries and goes on the pre-shading and the highlighting that you've done with the zenithal highlighting, you will start seeing the technology will start working. The color itself, the highlights will start popping through because the paint is a thinner paint, and that's what you want. I very rarely paint with thick paint. Clean off my brush here. I'm wanting those shades and the highlights to pop. Okay, so there's a shirt. Let's get this guy. I'm going a little bit slower because I don't want to mess up what I've done already with the green. Going over here. And again, this paintbrush is not cooperating, so switch to a different one. Was not holding its point for me. There we go. Yeah, so I am going a little bit slower initially here. Okay, let's grab this figure here and let's just hit the whole shirt, shall we? Make it easy for us. Just getting that paint all on that figure. This is the grunt work. Establishing all these bases and at least I have to tell myself just to keep moving on. I know I have to get through this because I know in my mind what the finished figure is going to look like, and I just have to get myself to that. So personally, morale is very important when painting your figures. Good self-talk is good. Okay, I'm going to alternate here, and I'm going to use the blue on his pants. Going a little bit slower around the cape, the cloak. Got that. Okay. Done. So now let's start going into the browns real quick. Just establishing that. So we go in the Beastie Brown, get some of the wormwood. You can see that right away. Establishing shade. To save myself time, I'm going to paint the shoes. I'm going to paint his pouch here. And I'm going to paint his hat. And you know what? His hair. And it does not matter right now that these are all the same colors, because you can, with highlights and shades, you can alternate and change the tones of that color on the fly. This is about getting the figure, just getting a lot of the base colors done. That's all this is. Mapping out. And I've also found, personally, for my own morale of painting, that a figure will start looking better in my eyes when I see uniform colors. You know, when I see that the figure itself is getting very close to getting done. If that makes sense. Instead of seeing partly primered figure with one color. And okay, let's see. How do I want to do this? Well, again, I just said that you can change color based on tone. So I'm going to use that same brown and paint the leggings and the boots or the shoes the same color. This saves me paint. This saves me also time from switching to different colors. But it also saves me time as far as painting, because these are done. But this, in the end, is not going to be the original color. And you know what? I'll do is hair here. Looks like he's got a bit of a beard. Okay, done. Let's see here. Let's get this part done. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the boots and the shoes. Always change the color up. Okay, do the same thing here. So getting the color all through this, and because this paint has got, you know, part of the paint is contrast, we're allowing and using that the contrast medium to flow into those crevices and get into the shadow areas. So you're still using contrast paint, but you're just mixing it with other paint, and that minimizes, from my experience, that coffee staining or whatever, the water staining that people talk about. Okay. Done. Okay. Sometimes you might get some paint on, but you can always touch up. Okay, now let's go back to the blue. Let's go start to the base part of the blue. The Periscope's blue is a great color, and you have to be careful though. If you add too much brown to it, like any color, it gets dark really quick. So we're going to start establishing the first base color and start painting in the highlights. That. Again, the idea with this technique is to get figures painted fast for the table. So it's, in my opinion, it's a couple steps up from tabletop. You know, people say, "Oh, this is tabletop standard." Yes, this is a couple steps up with a lot more shading, a lot more highlighting. But I don't want to minimize the effect by saying this is just tabletop standard. No. It is a way to get a lot of figures painted fast, though. Again, utilizing the pre-shading that's been done with the zenithal highlighting. I'm constantly moving the figure around. Okay, now I'm going to start working on the highlights of the blue, and I'm going to be using for that Reaper Templar blue, and I will put it right into the periscopes so that we're going right into the base color. Because we have a wet palette, we're utilizing the paint that's still wet, and we're easily able to blend and mix. Okay. And I'm going to start creating like zigzag patterns, painting onto the folds. Okay, here the arms here. Okay, this down here. Okay, this is an interesting figure. I love the pose, but I'm looking to see where I want to put the highlights. Because there's shadow here with the arm, so I'm not going to put a lot of highlights there. Same thing for this area. The arm is creating a lot of shadow. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for a little bit and move up to the brown. Start hitting these areas. If the paint to me looks too thick and it's not thin enough of what I'm wanting, that's when I add either water or glaze medium. Because I don't want to lose the work that I've done or attempted to do with paint that's too thick. Okay, so we're going to go hit the shoes. Also, with this type of brush, it's big enough, you can create stippling techniques, and you can do stippling techniques and create texture just by stippling. Okay, let's see. So this is when I make the decision, because I'm using the same color, how much of the color I'm going to highlight on one versus the shoes. So I'm going to go first start off with the base. Establish that. Going a little bit slower. What you're seeing here is the speed that I normally paint in. I'm not painting super fast for the video. I know people would like sometimes maybe a 10-minute video of a technique, but I'm trying to show you the full start to finish. But this is the speed of which I paint. This is the technique I use. Now, for painting figures that I'm going to be taking photographs for, product figures and stuff like that, and like I said, my personal or my leader figures, that I do take a little bit more time, but that time is done with more color, not necessarily speed of which I paint. So again, here this brown, utilizing the shade that we've already created. there's no need to go into this area here. Plus, I don't have the shields put on these figures. I wanted you guys to see the full figure. I thought it'd be easier that way without the shade or the spear. Okay, there's one color of the brown. Now I'm going to start stepping up the color. Let's see here. I use Beastie Brown for the main color. So this is when I look to see what colors I have around here, around my table. Beige brown is a little step up, so we're going to go there first. And I will drop that right in. Okay, so now we start seeing the tones change. Oops, and down. Okay, this figure here. Got the hat, pouch. Okay, so I'm going to abandon the boot color here and just go with the leggings. Start upping the tone or the brightness on the leggings. Same thing for this figure. Hitting the highlights again, utilizing the work that we've done already. I will paint the feet or the shoes the same brown color. Okay, and I'm going to need some more highlights, so then I'm going to go straight with beige brown. And thinning out the paint even more now. Not much of a change, but that's okay. The change will be coming right after this. Sometimes with my browns, I don't want to make a quick jump. I like making subtle jumps. And getting these folds. Okay, so now we're going to make a jump. Much more jump here. And we're going to do that I'm going to use Vallejo Pants Races Oak Wood. Drop that in. Mix that colors together, so now you're going to definitely see. So look at for the shade all the way. This is all we have here. And what's great about the wet palette is I can go back if I need to, if I made a mistake. Okay, again, I decided to lighten up the leggings instead of the shoes, because also with the shades I can change the color of those shoes, of the boots, make them darker. Go a little slower here. Okay. I'm going to make another jump. MIG. I think, what is this color? Oh, MIG Lightwood. I really like MIG paints. Highly recommend them. I have a lot of different paints. I'm not just agnostic. I mean, I'm not just on one brand. I have a whole bunch. Start lightening this up. Get this pouch back here. Let's get this. Get the legging. There, back of the legging. Shirt. Okay. I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. Going to go back to the blue. Add some more Templar blue right here. Creating the texture here, like I said. with the stippling motion of the brush. There. Pants. Okay, add some more Templar blue. Pure Templar blue. Bring more texture there. There. See, the paint is wet, but it's not like it's a wash. It's not just flowing down. So you have control. I think for this technique that I use, the most important thing is learning good brush control. And knowing what your paint's going to do. What it's going to look like after different colors are applied to it. Okay, I'm going to let this dry a tad and go back to the brown. Hopefully this is in focus for you guys. Okay, going back to the leggings. Again, because this is a wide brush, look how I'm able to just one pass make that. There you go. It's like a chiseled effect on the brush. Just chiseling out areas. Or applying chisels, I guess, or applying areas with the chisel brush. You don't need some expensive chisel brush. I don't know how they market chisel brushes and all that sort of stuff. I mean, yeah, they work, but with cheap craft brushes, you can do the same. Okay, I'm going to do one more highlight on this brown. I'm going to jump up the highlight. Actually, you know what? No, I think. Well, no. I will use bone white. Vallejo bone white. Drop that in. All of that together so that we've got all the highlight colors. See the jump? That's what's cool about the wet palette. You can see the jump that you've made. Okay, this is the highest points of highlight. Right there. Those areas, those highlights and shades. Okay, I think I am done here. Yep. I'm calling this brown done. I'm going to go back to the blue. I'm not going to add white. I'm going to use the silver gray. Sometimes I add too much, so then I go back and pull from the primary or the base color to tone it down. There we go. And at this point, at this point, I'm making points of light, points of highlights. Okay, let's see, right up here. Again, just hitting these areas where the light is hitting the most. And because the paint's still wet, I'm able to create texture and then blend down. Just creating effects. That's really what I've learned over the years. Personally, for me, is just creating effects with light and dark. Just to trick the eye. Okay, So I've basically established the main colors of the figures. What I have left to do is the flesh. And I guess I also have some other, the hair to do, and a couple of the helmets and stuff like that. But for the most part, these figures are about 75% done. As you can see, as I've done the video, it's given even more time for things to dry, and you're seeing the colors just blend together as they dry. So you're utilizing that the base or the layers there. And you can see also I could still, and I still can go back, apply even more highlights to those areas if I want to raise them up even more. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here and move on to face painting. Okay, I am nearing the end of painting these 4 figures. So what I normally do is, and you can see everything's dry, and you can see how all the highlighting shading is done already. Looks really good, in my opinion, for good wargame miniatures, for rank and file guys. Really like how that turned out. So then I look at the figures and say, okay, what do I need to power through to get these figures done? And that's where I'm at with these figures. And the number one thing for me is flesh. So that's what I'm going to do next. Paint up the flesh, and then we'll move to the helmet and hair and stuff like that. And then we will finish these figures. So I'm going to pause the video real quick, get my flesh tone base colors ready, and we will go to it. Okay, on to the flesh. Now bear in mind, this style is for tabletop painting. The war game, just painting out packs of figures really quick. So I'm going to abbreviate some of my techniques that I use for flesh, but in all cases, not in most cases, this is the base flesh color that I use. Pardon me, it's called Carne Marinian Tan. So that's the base color that I use for my flesh. So what I've done was, if you look at the handy dandy wet palette over here, I've got some here, and I am just going to make sure that I'm in focus here, and I'm just going to apply that to the flesh areas. Just like so. Going a little slow because I don't want to mess up anything else that I've already done. If I go over the beard with this, that's fine, because I'll go back and do another hair color later. What I'm going to do is, when I notice that there's belts and stuff that I've missed, so I'm going to use a darker brown and paint those, and then I will use that same color and paint any kind of belts or pouches that I've missed. And again, I can always increase or decrease the color by shading or highlighting. So I'm not too worried about using that same color. Here, the hand. So, okay, on the next. Going a little bit slower. Not too worried about under the neck, because when we do our shading and glazing, that will get the neck. It will go down in the deep areas. If I was painting for a competition, or if this was a standard, character figure, or then I would probably get down in there. But for this demonstration and for my tabletop, I have to remind myself, move forward, get this stuff painted. Going just a little slow right there. Again, I'm using my number 8 craft brush for this. This is the grunt work. I mentioned before, I do have Winsor & Newton brushes, which I use, but for the base colors like this, I don't use it. I want to get the base colors on, and when it comes to the detailing work, then I'll use my Winsor & Newtons. In previous videos, I talked about that I've made. I have a brush that a Winsor & Newton brush that I only use for painting flesh, for faces. And when I'm done, that gets washed and conditioned, and it gets put away back into the tube. I have a brush, a separate brush for painting camouflage, or if I was going to do some freehand work or whatever. I use it for that brush. I use it for that purpose. When I'm done, I wash it, condition it, put it back in its tube. Okay, just a little slower on the neck. There you go. Okay, so now I'm done with the flesh, the base color flesh. What next? Well, let's see here. I've got this case, 2 helmets, and I have this cloth helmet to do. So what I'm going to do is I will get my metal color. Of course, it's not around here. Okay, so this is what's right in front of me right now. I'm going to use Vallejo gunmetal, game color gunmetal. I'm going to drop that on right there. And this might be too bright for you. The color itself, I really kind of like, when I paint metal, I like going a little bit darker first as a base, just to save me time. But however, as I said before many times, the shading and those tones can be achieved with washes, and we will take care of that. Okay. There, like so. Done. Okay, now, what do I have left on these 4 figures? I have hair, I have a hat, I have belts. Ooh, what is this? I didn't see this. Okay, well, I know what I'll do there. To save myself time, I will paint the handle of the sword right here. Get that done. Get that metal done. I'll paint the tip here metal. Okay. There. Okay. I see a couple of piece parts though. I moved a little too fast on the flesh. Missed the inside of that hand completely. But that's okay. Easily fixed. Okay. So now I'm going to start with a dark brown color to work the hair and the leather parts of the belts or the pouches. And I'm going to use the Vallejo chocolate brown. I'll stick that right there. And let's make sure that's in camera. Just get the pouch. Get this scabbard. If I wanted to take, spend some more time, I could paint all these different colors, the pouches and stuff and the belts, different colors. But again, I'm trying to paint this as fast as I can, get this on the table, because there's games to be had, and we need these figures painted. Okay, still taking that same number 8 round craft brush, painting, going a little bit slower, painting the mustache, beard, and the hair. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick sanity check to see if I missed anything on this figure that the shading may not completely cover. Okay, so I'm going to say that guy's done. Over here, I am going to paint his hat and his beard and all the leather the same color here. Or I'm sorry, his mustache, all the same color. Again, when I'm painting units, I always think to myself, economy of speed. I want to get stuff out as fast as I can, and I am trying to minimize any more work or any more time that it would take me to stop, throw some new paint down that's a completely different shade. That's just my mindset when I paint in batches like this. Okay. I'm getting the scabbard, painting belt. I got some brown paint just underneath there that I didn't want. So what I do is I take another handy dandy craft brush that's around, or a sponge, and I just do some dabbing. I get it wet and I just remove the paint. Okay. Going a little slow here just to get that belt, top of the pouch. Okay, another quick sanity check. Make sure I have everything done. Again, I'm not worried that the hair and the hat are the same color. Not at all. Because that will all be changed. Okay. I think that guy's done. Good. Okay. On to the next one. I like how this is. This guy's done. Last but not least, this guy. Painting the hair. slowly going down here. There we go. Okay, let's look at the belts, the accoutrement that's on here. Okay. Done. That's dark. There's a pouch right here. I don't really have to paint it because it's going to get shadows. Okay. Wash off my brush because I saw two things I'd like to hit on this figure. That, and then I'm going to put a little bit more flesh right there. Okay, we're done. Taking a sanity check. You can see the spot here underneath the boot that I missed completely. So I just put in that darker color. Doesn't matter because it's a shaded area. Okay, done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, use my handy dandy $10 hair dryer, blow dry this, and then get to the next step. Okay, I used the hair dryer and I have dried all the areas of the figure. Now, what I just did was I painted all the flesh, the hat, the helmets, the hair, all everything. I didn't do any type of highlighting or shading at all at this point. For me, for that type of equipment, isn't necessary to do all that. However, I do need to create some sort of shadow that I can build color off of. And what I do is I take Vallejo model color German black brown. This is a very, 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 very dark brown. It's not black, but it's damn near. And I create a wash. And I have a nice handy bottle of water here. And this is just distilled water. And I take these pieces of plastic that are from blister trays that I cut and I keep. And I create a wash. So I just drop in. And it, you know, of course, the amount of water you put in is depending upon how thick and how dark the wash is going to be. So a lot of it is just trial and error to see, you know. Okay. A lot of times I will then take and see that, okay, yeah, it's not too bad. That's not too bad. Okay. So now, take the wash, get some paint off, and I will then apply that wash to the face. Everything that I have not shaded yet. So what that's doing is right away, it's instantly creating shadows. It's a huge time saver. Okay, that guy is almost done. Okay, next one. I just follow suit. Get right under the neck here. Start creating some shadows there. Okay, go around here. down real fast. Now, if you have an issue with the wash going too far, I take a makeup brush and just remove it. No big deal. When I was younger and new into painting, I would freak out if I got paint on areas on some of the figures, like, oh my god, I just ruined this. Well, not necessarily. You have some time. You have time to recover. That's why I recommend people have makeup brushes, makeup sponges next to them so that they can remove excess paint if they need to. And also that they have another brush that can quickly dab up paint. And especially when you're painting unit figures, and at least I do, I paint pretty fast, and there's bound to be mistakes that's going to occur. Just going to happen. So be prepared. Okay. And to save myself time as well, if I see an area that is already, I know it's going to have a lot of shade, I'll just use this color and just put it in there. Okay. I'm going to pause it, use the hair dryer, and dry these guys off so I can start going to the next stage. Okay, these figures have been blown dried, and this is what they look like after the brown wash is dried. So I've created shadow with that really easy, really quick. You can see around the hat, that sort of thing. A lot of you guys, when I've posted pictures of the figures, they ask me, hey, how do you do your flesh? This is a quick and easy method for me that I use for painting flesh. I'm only going to use, well, including the base color, 4 colors that I use for flesh. You could go more, but for this, I don't need to. Now, I mentioned my craft brushes. I also mentioned my Winsor Newton brushes. I have this Winsor Newton size 1 Cotman outliner. This is perfect for quick precision, speed, details. So I'm going to show you how I use that. Okay, because we've applied a shadow area or shadow color to the flesh, I'm going to go back to the carne medium, or carne tan, and I'm going to use the outliner, and I am going to hit, break off my stick here, hit the areas where the light would be hitting the most. And you may or may not be able to see the changes yet. But this is just kind of establishing, again, the highlights. So I'm putting it, using this outliner, putting it on the cheekbones, putting it on the bridge of the nose, putting it on the fingers, top of the hand, that sort of thing. Okay, there's one. Make sure that this is in focus. I apologize if it keeps going in and out. So again, using this outliner and just hitting the top areas. Top of the knuckles, top of the fingers, top of the thumb. I will also, depending upon the neck, paint some back onto the neck. Top of the knuckles. Things will start to really speed up now. And this is the time that I really enjoy painting figures, is the final work, the detail work, when you start seeing everything come together. because your morale could be easily broken during early stages of painting, and you go, this does not look good, this is not the way I wanted this to look, but then you just got to carry on, get through the grunt work. James Wapple says in his Patreon videos, it's for some people who don't like eating broccoli, he likens it to, you have to eat your broccoli first before you get to the dessert. So this is the grunt work, or the grunt work is established now. This is, for me, chocolate cake. Okay, so there's the first color. I'm going to take my brush, clean it off. Now, first, quote, flesh color that I use is, this is in layers. So this is Vallejo Game Color Dwarf Skin. Shaky, shaky. One drop into the Carne Flesh. Glaze medium. Make sure my mixing brush is clean. Mix, 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 mix. So what you can see, hopefully, is that the quote flesh color is starting to get brighter or lighter. So back in line. Start here again. Same thing. Taking this and just going on the top of the knuckles, cheekbones, chin. This first color is subtle, and it may be difficult to see on camera, so I apologize, but this is a layered approach, so just have to go through it. Knuckles, knuckles, knuckles. Here. Put down this neck here. Cheek. And of course these faces are lovely sculpted, so it makes it even easier to paint and a heck of a lot more fun, because you're seeing the character in the sculpts and the expression. Bridge of the nose. Top of the hand. Not even mess around with the lips. I'm just going to have the lips be the same color as the first, I guess, highlight of the Carne medium. Done. Okay, so then my second color is Vallejo Flat Flesh. Shake that up real good. Drop in there. Handy dandy wet palette. Everything is mixing together. So everything is from the base color going up. It's very important to me to do that. Okay, here we go. I'm slowing down a little bit there on the nose. Got a lot of water on this brush, so when that happens, I gotta dry it off. And hitting the cheeks. And then sometimes what I do is I will just, for these type of figures, I will just pick a point of the highest highlight and I will stop highlighting the other part of the face. So if the sun's hitting here, I will just hit the nose and hit the cheekbone, but I won't necessarily hit the other side of the face. almost done with this. Okay. Now, sometimes this first color transition is very subtle, so then I will then take the same flat flesh again and then put another drop in to the mix. And I'll do it again. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Just dropping it, just little dots. Just adding dots to trick the eye. I hope you can see that the difference in color. Top of the knuckles. Okay, do the same thing with the cheekbones, nose, chin. Okay, here we go. So then, wash off my brush. The last color is, God, what is this? That's right, Vallejo Basic Skin Tone. So this is a definitely a highest highlight for this. And a lot of times what I'll do is I will, in this case for these figures, put it on the side and add just a little bit of the color. And this paint is not diluted that much. I don't want it to be, because what this is signifying is that the highest points of light on the flesh. And what are those? So in my case, these are the top of the knuckles, the bridge of the nose right there, the cheekbone right there, little chin, turn around, top of the hand. Okay. There, just creating points. So all this is creating points of light. I personally feel it's important to get those areas of the knuckles and the folds of the fingers, make those points there so that those are easily seen. Okay. There you go. Okay, so in my mind, the faces are done. So now, what else do I have? Well, I've got hair. Now I talked about using the same brown color and then changing it up as far as adding different colors to the shading or the highlighting to break it up. And this is easily done. What's great about having the wet palette is there's still wet paint on here that I can utilize, that I can just grab, that I don't necessarily have to grab another bottle for. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to utilize what's already on the palette. So I added a drop of the glaze medium. Let's go back here. Okay, I'm going to quickly, using my outliner, go back to the areas where, just the highlighted areas on the hair. Hopefully you can see this. I'm sorry. Mustache. Okay, so again, what I'm doing is I'm just reapplying a lighter color of the base to help establish the next stages. And this time is when I can see if I've missed parts of the face or the hair that I painted before. I can just go back and take that color and just create lines and dots. And it's funny because I move so fast at times, when I go back to these stages, I see, why, how did I miss that? How did I miss that portion there? Well, I did. So the beauty of it is you just go back. Okay. Going down the hair. Down the beard. The scabbards. Belts. Okay, done. So I've got this established, the base colors. Now I need to ask myself, okay, how do I want this to look? How do I want to break up the difference between, say, for example, the hat and the beard and the scabbard? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the brown here, and I'm going to take some of the base flesh right there. Hopefully you can see that. And just start already automatically making a lighter brown. And I will just start putting it on. Again, I'm just making dots. Not too worried about a lot of the detail right now. Not too worried about if I see spots that don't have paint in it still from me moving my paintbrush, because that's all going to be taken care of from the washes. Okay, I am going a little bit slower though around here because I'm not wanting to have to redo my face. Okay. Line it up for the camera. Quickly doing the hair here. Okay, so now I need to start even bringing that even brighter, so I'm going to add some more of that flesh right from the wet into this brown. Also, I'm not worried about going too bright because the shades are going to take it down, to tone it down. It's funny, you'll find, a lot of people use white to highlight things. And as you can see, I've used the same flesh color, just thrown it into the brown, and that creates a different kind of highlight. I tell guys over and over again, it's important for you to know what color, first of all, know what your paints will do and what they're going to look like dry. Have faith in your process, but also see what the color changes and variations are with using different like tans or light grays to highlight things instead of white. Just create some sort of eyebrow there. Okay. Last one. So now I'm just tricking the eye by creating highlights on the lower edges of the hair. Okay. So I have to remind myself, Tim, these are wargame figures. So I'm done with the hair. I'm going to do one more color. I'm going to add one more highlight just to create the brightest highlights. So I take my flesh color, bam, put it right in there. Got a nice cream, brown cream. And I'm just going to hit the mustache. Just hit the edge of the mustache, hit the edge of the hair at the highest point where light's hitting it. Okay. Talking to my mate John Bradley, one of the things that he hates is wasting paint. So he looks to see what paint he has on his palette and where he can apply it else on the figure, or if he's got other figures that not related to the current project laying on, can I use this brown color on that? He does not like wasting paint. I particularly don't either. So this is a way to use what's already on the palette. Okay, so that's it with the hair. Done. Wargame figures, Tim. So, take my brush. This is the base color that we use for the leather. I'm going to just go in and see what we have right here from what's wet from yesterday, or actually today, and just start mixing. See what we have. What can we create? Purists might be saying, oh my god, I can't believe he's doing that. Well, why not? It's color, it's paint. So I'll just start tricking the eye again with making lines. Just lines and dots. Sometimes the first layer is subtle, and that's fine, because it's part of that process of that layering. I don't have anything on here. Good, he's done. So now I'm going to start seeing what I can do to add some more highlights to this. Heck, I'm just going to see what kind of mess we have here. Okay. Paint is extremely wet. So I might actually have to drop in another color to jump this up. Okay. What I could do is take some of this flesh and put it right into here. Take some of this blue. Then we're creating a different highlight because the paint is extremely wet right now. So right now I would say this is kind of a glaze. There we go. Okay, and then let's see if I can actually get some thick paint going on here. Let's see here. Kind of mixing, just kind of see what can I create. So all these good. Okay, so I would say we're done. We are done with all the base colors, the base highlighting. Now we are going to move on to the shades, and this is a quick process, and we're at the point where actually this is the fun part for me, the shading and the pin washing and stuff like that, the outlining. So there you go. Like how that cape looks. It didn't take that long to do that at all. Okay, so I'm going to pause it, use the hair dryer, come back. Okay, now we're going to go to the first wash shade that I use, and I apply the first one as a filter. It's a very thin layer of paint, and I use Army Painter Strong Tone. So I take that, I take my water and start thinning that out. I don't want to go too dark with this. This is not the purpose. The purpose in my mind is I'm applying a filter, a uniform filter, a filter that would go across the entire figure to create a uniform look of all the color. Okay, so I just apply this. In my mind, my rule is I'd rather go thinner with this first stage of color than thicker. Because if the paint is too thick, if it's too dark, well, you can just really mess up things. So you won't be happy. Trust me. I've done it a couple times. very fast. Sometimes you'll have bubbles or pooling with this. I would recommend you remove those bubbles and you remove the pooling as fast as possible. Just with your brush. You're just brushing it on, just removing it. Okay, so then what I do is I'm going to go to a next stage, but I want to make sure that the paint has had time to settle. It's somewhat dry. I want to make sure, like I said, that I don't have any of the pools. Already, just that overall shade has really made that figure look complete. You don't have a huge increase and decrease of color. Okay, so while this is wet, then this is the next step that I do. I take Army Painter. Oh, I gotta find it. I thought I had it with me. Army Painter Blue Tone. And now, what I'll do is I will put that on my handy dandy blister. And I'll add 2 drops of water because I want this to be thin, but not too thin. Okay, then I'll do this test to see how's it going to look. Okay, now, a lot of times people use black for their shadow areas, and that's perfectly okay. I love using blue, dark blue. It makes those shadow areas a little bit more interesting. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the brush and I'm seeing the deepest, darkest shadow areas, and I'm just applying that blue color. So right down there in the boots, between the legs here is dark. Right here, these folds under the arm. It may look to you like I'm applying it all over the figure again. I am not applying this over the entire figure. I'm putting this specifically in areas where I'm trying to build. Here's a good example. Build shade, build shadow. Right there, right underneath there. Build shadow right between the legs here. Right there, under the neck. Let's do a little bluing on the helmet. And if it's too much, makeup brush or makeup sponge. Okay. Okay, now I ask myself, I look at this figure, where's the deep shadow areas where I want to really create depth, interesting depth. So that's where I'm putting that blue, right in here. Right here, right behind this area, I'm just putting it right in there. Right under the chin. Fold this arm. See? Oop, gone. It's just that easy. I feel it sound like Gallagher, the comedian. It's just that easy. Okay. Creating some interesting shades here. The cloak. Lots of shadow work under here. Okay. Now, blue on tan, light brown can be drastic. So you want to have it a little, you don't want it you don't want a lot of blue because you'll see a quick change. However, if you do it right, if there is a right way, the subtlety and the shading will, you'll see it. You'll see it right away, and it really adds. Like right here, I'm just creating more shadow by dropping that blue right in there. Same thing right here. See? If you added black to these areas, it would do too much of a change, I think, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but okay. Got it. Okay, done with that stage. So I'm going to pause the video, use my hair dryer, and go to the final stage. Okay, we are at the final stage of how I paint for working figures. Thank you for bearing with me. The last thing I do is I will use Reaper brown liner or blue liner, and I will put those colors and do like the pin lining or outlining of areas where I really want to accentuate shadow areas. Now this is not necessary, but I think, to me, in my mind, for my sanity, it just adds one more layer of depth, and it just brings out a lot of the detail in the figure. This has had time to dry. I've used the hair dryer. Here's what they look like with the shades done. So very happy. And now what we'll do with the brown pin washing is that we will create even more deeper, darker shades, shadow areas. So I'm going to take my brown liner, put it on there, add a drop or two of the glazed medium. Okay. Oh no. Take this figure. Okay. Take a look at where do I want to create the transition? Where do I want to create the deepest shadow? So I'm just taking it and putting that outliner, the same outliner that I used on the flesh, on the face, and I'm just putting it under. So this area right here with his big old mustache, adding this. Now this process can be slower, and I am moving a lot slower, but I'm wanting, and I'm taking my time, because to me, this is the icing on the cake, and maybe even the cherry. But so I will outline the cuff area where the hand meets the cloth. Put right there. Start outlining areas of that sword, the sheath. Looking at the figure, where's the deepest, darkest shadows of this figure? Right there. Right under his neck, that's a pretty dark area. The fold of his hat. And then the lines by the boots of the leggings. Accentuate that. Reverse. Creating that shadow right there, see? Perfect outliner, one stroke. Just follows it. You put that outliner in that crevice, put it in the crevice, and you just follow straight. You don't have to move it any which way. You just wherever you want to put it. Highly recommend them. And I think these brushes are maybe, I don't know, I got them on Amazon for maybe $3 or $4 a piece. Okay. Just quick little more detail just to break up where the hair is meeting the face. Done. We have a done figure, people. Sometimes, though, I will see an area that, for whatever reason, I have added so much paint into areas and I just can't cover it, so then I'll add that dark brown. Now, I also use blue liner for the very same technique, but for the purpose of this video demonstration, I am just going to use brown. Okay, so let's look at this face where the beard is. It's kind of hard to tell where the beard starts and the face stops and vice versa, so making a D mark there. And then sometimes with metal, I'll take the brown and kind of make some stitching, create some shadow, maybe some dents. Just take my finger and then rub the excess off. Okay. Always looking to see where I think the most shadow is lying. Okay, this is what I was excited to see. Let's create some more shadow there. Now, if it's too dark, you can take your makeup sponge and just wipe it away. Correct that. Creating deep shadows where this is tied together. Putting some dark area right there behind that cloak, creating that transition, creating that shadow, creating some texture, stippling. Okay. Done. Last one. Now, the same holds true for this brown liner as blue on light tans, light grays. If you add too much, if it's too thick, you will see a big increase in shade, and you may not be happy. So, word of warning. I remember when I was younger, the way I would paint, I'd be so careful and making sure my brush is in the certain area. My God, I don't know how I got anything painted. Well, I didn't. You know, it'd take me forever to paint things. Okay, there's a happy mistake. My brush on my sponge. Wipe it away. It's gone. Creating some stippling technique, using stippling techniques, creating some texture on the hat. There. Okay, I'm going to do the accentuate the pouch a little bit. Okay. That's it. We're done. Okay. So that is how I paint a pack of 4 figures for Wargame tabletop ready. It may not be the fastest way, but I think it is an effective way to show highlighting and shading. Now looking at this, see, this is when I start obsessing a little bit. I still would like to have a little bit more shadow area. So I'm going to take that blue, and I'm going to take the brown liner. Look at this figure and say, where do I want shadow? And I'm just going to create shadow right there. Trying to create folds. And sometimes it's even going in and actually painting over the area. Wiping off. There. Well, I hope this video has helped. You guys definitely have listened to me ramble. Again, this is a technique that I use every day. It's a very fast way to get stuff painted up, especially for big games. And it's highly effective, I think. And your figures will look really, really nice. And it's a quick and easy way to create shading and highlighting and definition, so you don't just have a base color, you know. So if this helps you, or if you have any questions, please feel free to leave comments in the chat window, and let me know if there's anything else that you would like to see. I'm going to attach a photo of what the figures look like all dried and lined up together. So until next time, thank you for taking the time to listen and watch me. I hope this helps.